Okay, these are the Bontrager Flatlines. These are my old but awesome 510 Freeriders. Freeriders, very famous for the real grippy sole. It's got a really flexible feel to it. These Bontragers, it's a Vibram sole, and it actually feels really stiff. So my initial thing is that I'm not confident that this is going to be a suitable replacement for my Freeriders. I am hoping if they can, this Vibram sole can wear better, that would be great. But I'm not sure if it's going to have the grippiness not only to connect with my pedals, but also for non-slip. You know, when you hop off into a rock that's on a steep slope, these are almost like climbing shoes in their feel. The cool little features, you got your little springy thing here, elastic thing to secure your laces, so you don't have to, on these I always had to just tuck them in under the laces like that. They seem like they're a little bit narrower, take up a little bit less space, so that may be good. And maybe not quite as much protection, but the stiffer sole, maybe that will offer more protection as long as my feet don't come off the pedals. Anyway, when I opened them up in the box, I was thinking, well, I'm just going to send these things back. They just don't look like they're going to work for me. I checked with Trek, and they said, go ahead and try them for 30 days. If you don't like them, send them back. So we'll try them for 30 days. Okay, this is my first ride impressions of the Bontrager Flatline shoes for flats. I'm running MG, the Wellgo MG5s, pretty much battered. It's about time for some new pins. First few minutes out, I noticed that they weren't nearly as sticky as my Freeriders, and it seemed like they almost were skittering around a lot in the rough stuff. And I almost turned around and went back to get my old battered Freeriders. But well, I'm gonna go ahead and run the rest of the trails and see if I can adapt to them, or if they break in or something. And they are getting better, where I'm getting used to it. And I guess maybe I'm learning to put more pressure on them. Having to learn the balance point. I run a center of the arch, center of the foot position, like like the Catalyst pedal. And so far I'm going to run them another few more times and then decide for sure if I'm going to return it. I think I'm running a hardtail bike. I think maybe with a suspension bike, it might not be so chattery, I guess you might say. It might smooth things out enough to where your feet stay on the pedals. But we'll do some more testing and see how it goes. And unfortunately, I don't have a full suspension bike to try it out, but we'll see if I can adapt here on my hardtail within the next 30 days. Alright, going to do a quick overview of my Bontrager Flatline shoes for mountain biking. Now, first let's do the stuff I really like. One, they're small, compact, lightweight. Compact meaning there's less risk of them hanging up on rocks, roots, and tree stumps and the like. And then lightweight, of course, requires less energy to move them up and down to run your power your bicycle. I also like that they look a little bit less like a skateboarder shoe, because I don't want to be like this old dude trying to look like a skateboarder. And my wife always makes fun of me when I'm wearing my 510 Freeriders, because they look like skateboard shoes, and I look like a guy trying to look like a little kid. Okay, the other thing the Bontrager Freerider has is a stiff sole, and it's a fairly stiff rubber. Whereas the Freerider, I can actually compress this sole and it bends pretty easily. I cannot do any such thing with the Bontrager. So these the Flatlines provide some good impact protection due to that stiff sole. I also like that there's kind of this almost like a shock absorber thing in the heel of the shoe that does compress a little bit on impact. So if you're doing a heels down position and you do a rock strike, a little bit of impact protection there, as well as a little bit of side protection here on the side to protect your ankle. Advantage of the stiff sole and the heavier, stiffer rubber is I rode these for 22 miles on a pretty gnarly trail, and there is no sign of where my pins off my flat pedals were digging in. And whereas of course this is 2 years of use, on my Freeriders there's actually holes where I can shove my finger right through those. But it took 2 years to do it on the Freeriders, so give them some credit. So a long wearing sole. And then also, like everyone says, it's easier to reposition on your pedals with that stiffer rubber compound. Whereas these, because they're so flexible and such a soft sole, your pins actually kind of sink into it and it almost feels like you're clipped in. Okay, easy to reposition. That kind of leads into the things I don't like about the Bontrager Flatline. Because it's easy to reposition, in the rough stuff, like when you're blitzing through a rock garden section or a whole string of sharp-edged, kind of ruddy stuff where it's your bike's bouncing around. And I'm running a hardtail, so your mileage may vary if you're running a full suspension bike. But with my hardtail, it becomes it's just like skittery, trying to maintain connection between my pedals and my shoe on the Flatlines. It just kind of bounce around. No such thing happens with my Freeriders. They kind of settle in deep enough, the pins dig deep enough into the rubber that the shoe can come up and down a little bit. The rubber gives and stays in contact, and once you've got your contact with your pedals, they do not want to move, which does make it a little bit easier if you don't get it quite in the right place that you want it to be. You almost have to kind of lift up and reposition it. Now, the other thing I had was on some really rocky technical climbs, where you needed these momentary bursts of power, a lot of acceleration. I found that twice on my ride, the 22-mile ride I did, was these shoes they slid forward on my pedals and off. And that's when I was up out of the saddle, pedaling standing to absorb the rocks and stuff, and on a technical climb. And twice these slid forward on my pedals. Now that could be just something I have to, I could learn to accommodate for, and with the maybe better foot positioning could correct that. But that's something I experienced on these shoes, and I've not had happen with my the Freeriders. The other thing I tested was this stealth sole on the Freeriders, the 510 Freeriders, is so grippy that you can get up on a limestone rock face at a pretty steep angle, and the shoes will adhere. And I did check with these. These do not adhere quite as well. They will begin slipping down if the slope gets steep enough on a rock face, or like slick rock. If you're riding in Moab, these things are awesome. They'll stick everywhere. In fact, you feel like you can climb up a vertical surface with these shoes. No such luck with these. You could slide down that vertical surface with these shoes. Now the other issue was comfort. Now, again, to give these shoes, you know, some credit, they're brand new. Just wore them one ride, and whereas these have been ridden for 2 years and are well broken in. But where the tongue attaches up in here was a little bit of a ridge, and while it wasn't painful or it wasn't really even uncomfortable. It was just I could feel it. So not quite as plush as my Freeriders, and it's not surprising because the inside of these is pretty much, once you get past the combing here, this material here, the inside of it is what your foot is up against. Whereas on the Freeriders, it's a much more plush interior. There's a liner inside my Freeriders, which made these comfortable from day one. I love these from day one. The other thing was I've heard a number of reviewers tout the fact that these have a lot of room in the toe box. Well, maybe this shoe has a lot of room in the toe box compared to most clipless pedals, but it's nowhere near the size of a toe box as this. And you can see it, obviously, a much bigger toe box on the 510 Freeriders as opposed to the Flatlines. Now, of course, the Flatlines are much lighter, or noticeably lighter than the Freeriders. So I find these more comfortable, more roomy, or roomier than the Flatliners. I get the impression that these were a shoe designed for flat pedals, built by people transitioning from clipless. And the styling, the narrowness, the very stiff sole gives me that feeling that these were designed by clipless riders, or primarily clipless riders. I think these would be great for a cross-country rider, as opposed to my preferred riding style, which is more trail riding, trousy, rock garden-y, technical stuff. I much prefer the Freeriders, where I need that grippy sole rather than the efficient, maybe a more efficient drive that you might get out of this lighter pedal and stiffer sole. Now, you might be tempted to think, oh, I'm going to make fun of the fact that this is called Flatline and say that it's dead on arrival, Flatline as in heartbeat. But I actually do like this shoe. It seems well made. The construction is solid. It has some of the benefits I think that will work great for a cross-country rider. And it might even work fine for those that are running full suspension bikes. I think maybe a full suspension bike maybe won't be as jarring as my hardtail, and maybe it will be more stable in holding its position on pedals. Also, another possibility is my pedals are pretty battered and bruised. There's some old Welgo MG5s, and I got a variety of different pins, replacement pins in them. And with sharper pins, I bet you could get this thing to adhere. But with sharper pins, you're going to start tearing even a stiffer sole up. So anyway, I decided I'm going to return these to Trek. And thankfully, they do have I actually talked to their customer service people in advance of actually trying these out to make sure that for real you can actually try these for 30 days and then return them if you don't like them, which is incredible. A good guarantee from Trek and Bontrager. And not only that, if you register on their website online before you purchase these, you will qualify for free return shipping. So that's a really good good deal. So if you want to try them out, be sure to register online, so you can, if you need to return them, you can get that free return shipping. I think a lot of people will actually really like these shoes. But just for me, for my rocky terrain riding and trails riding, I prefer these, the Freeriders, and I'm actually going to order replacements for my poor battered, tore up Freeriders. The other thing is that while I may be a fairly decent rider with years of motocross experience and observed trials experience, I'm not a professional racer by any means, and it might be that faster, more talented riders will be able to take advantage of maybe by a little more pressure, using downward pressure, kind of like what you would do with a bunny hop, keeping these adhered to the pedals maybe better, may work. And so I can't comment on, maybe a faster rider, more talented rider could actually find these more useful than I do. And again, full suspension bike may also work well. And yeah, otherwise solid shoe. I actually like the color on these. I was hoping to call these my ruby red mountain bike slippers, but I'm tempted almost to keep them, just to switch back and forth and see if they wear in more, or develop, maybe if I get some different pedals. I've been thinking about getting some of the Catalyst pedals and see if the broader base pedal would adhere better with these, or try the sharper pins thing and see if that would work better. But hey, I love these shoes. I'm not quite sure why I decided to switch from them. I thought maybe I could get a more durable sole and still have the grippiness of the stealth pattern on the Freeriders, and I think I was wrong. So I'm going to stick with the Freeriders. My next pair of shoes, which I've already ordered, is another set of Freeriders, and these lovely things will be going back to Trek. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe.